Everything Great About Split is sponsored by Wix. Look, I'm not saying Blumhouse didn't have anything this good before Split, but some of their best films started with Split, so win for being part of this. And right out of the gate, you already know you're in for OG Shyamalan. I really feel like there was this sigh of relief during the opening shot. Slowest dolly zoom that pulls the already isolated Casey even farther away from the group.
Can't invite everyone in my art class except for one person without social networking evidence inflicting more pain on that person.
I mean, I hate that our current culture allows social media to have such a huge impact on people's formative years, but her response is pretty great. Whether you want to call it a pity invite or not, she was trying to save Casey's feelings.
And there was that rumor that went around that she just kept running away from home.
So just every line. Yeah, every line. Okay, so the entire twist, the entire crux of the film is set up right here, explaining why Casey is the way she is. This is writing acuity. And visual acuity as Casey tries to hide in the shot reverse shot. This is very likely the Steadicam operator with some crew approaching, but I like to think of it as Kevin, Hedwig, Patricia, and Dennis, all being represented. Just these smooth pans side to side revealing different things at different times. Ugh. Dennis is so detail-oriented, he almost doesn't notice Casey until she tries to open the door, since she initially wasn't trying to escape or antagonize him. Unnerving score unnerves me.
Hurt yourself.
Advice that makes sense coming from someone who's been sexually abused her entire life.
Everything's okay. We're okay.
Optimism? So after seeing the movie all the way through, the little smile on the happy girl is heart-wrenching compared to what she's like now. Also, note that her uncle is introduced before her father, and he's telling her the story. I can't even win that.
Father of one of the students woke up dazed in King of Prussia.
There's your first real hint if you've seen Unbreakable as many times as I have. You might remember it takes place in Philly, which is like half an hour from King of Prussia Mall.
We can win. He'll hurt us. No. Shut up.
There's this double duty going on where we know Casey's dad taught/trained her in what we can assume is survival at least, so the first thing this does is set her apart in that regard.
Make sure you put your gloves on after you finish. Your feet and your hands get cold first out there.
But once you know she's an abuse survivor, there's also an undertone of being realistic about the direness of the situation, as in she's been here before and knows to be calm and think everything through.
We don't even know what this is yet.
And then the survival side is nailed home with her dad teaching her about hunting. Yes, drinking and hunting do go together. Don't at me, it's a thing. But when you start to consider that her uncle is always handing her dad a beer, ugh. I hate that I'm gonna keep pointing out things that make me cry inside. It's great writing, but it feels wrong to win it. Actually, let's do this. We'll start another win counter for really gross, awful things that happen to be evidence of good writing. Okay, there. This applies too. I think it's most interesting that we actually only see Barry very briefly in the end, but Dennis is so good at pretending to be Barry, even Dr. Fletcher was tricked, if not for all his meticulous straightening around her office.
I don't believe it. Yeah. No offense. That, I need to buy that.
Oh, good. Well, at least now we know you're the best judge of these kinds of things.
Don't worry.
Why would we worry? Oh, what a reveal. And let's just throw some wins at McAvoy for not going full Doubtfire and being a believable, serene British female. Also, since this is the first win that really deals with DID, I can add a win for what I'm going to call DID accuracy. I was actually lucky enough to have a dialogue and get some notes from some people very knowledgeable about DID, and they confirm that most of this is realistic, including different accents and two alters conversing. They mentioned the outfits were probably a stretch, but I think that's more for the audience's sake. So I'll be adding in some DID accuracy wins occasionally that will be coming from Nebula.
You speak of them like they're supernaturally gifted, like they have powers or something.
Funny you should say that.
That you are sacred food.
Maybe he has a dog or something. Think he's gonna feed us to his dogs?
Because that's better? Is that? That's not better. Gotta love the child's drawing being shown coming out of Hedwig's file, leading right into his introduction.
And he'll do awful things to you. I have blue socks too.
Non sequiturs just always get me.
They don't tell me much. I just ate a hot dog.
You don't know how they think.
No, they don't tell me much.
I really like that rather than explaining DID to Casey for the purposes of the audience, and one could argue her question was meant to probe the rules of DID, but since alters wouldn't know what the others think, he responds exactly like a 9-year-old would. And confirmed by Nebula for accuracy, since the identities are different people.
How old are you?
9?
I also love the way he sits up tall when she asks that. Ah, McAvoy.
Okay.
The sincerest of creepy excitement.
Guys, you're not being funny.
Love that even though Hedwig was having a hard time opening the door, Dennis pushes right through the girls, since your perception is your reality. 2 teenage girls are generally going to be stronger than a 9-year-old boy. The constant long take aesthetic ramps the tension and it always makes you uneasy.
I thought I lost you.
Sharp, high-pitched, abrupt music with the jump scare cliche dodge. Barely even call it a jump scare.
Taking notes in different handwritings about separate things at the same time.
I remember learning in a psych class in college about different things that happen to people if the connection between the hemispheres of the brain were severed, so I never totally doubt things like this, though nothing to back it up if it's real.
Is this where our sense of the supernatural comes from?
Yeah, kinda, at least in the Shyamalan verse. Going full Barry would be tough for Dennis at this point after the unpleasantness at the zoo, and you can see it on his face. It's not every actor that you could do a long take close-up for this long, but with McAvoy you can see him trying to sell Dennis impersonating Barry.
Please believe me, I'm Barry.
Oof, that subtle irritation, but held back just enough so that it could be Barry just getting agitated.
You're getting a little softer on the middle, Jay.
Is it weird that the writer feels the need to make his characters call him out for being chubby?
Good job, big brother.
Ugh.
I've heard that Asian people's music aids digestion.
Definitely, that's why our meals are always accompanied by
Good for you. It's crooked.
at least one thing that Dennis and Patricia have in common, which lends itself to them being aligned in their beliefs.
Tigers have only 30 teeth. That's 12 less than a dog. I thought that was a fun fact.
Listen, I'll be the judge of what are fun facts. For instance, in addition to that zoology lesson, Patricia also offers this one,
They're crepuscular, right? Means they travel around during dusk and dawn.
which are perfectly fun facts someone working at a zoo would acquire. The chair doesn't shatter into a million pieces, as is the movie chair cliche. Another stressful escape long take. Nope.
The beast? He's coming for you.
It's at this point that Split's Beast has reminded me of Infamous 1 and 2 and how gosh darn good those games are. That's right, Split gets a win for similar imagery and sharing a name.
Mr. Dennis? He says you wear a lot of shirts.
Another hint at what's actually going on with Casey. Combination of being a survivor and probably wanting to hide her scars.
I can wish myself into the light anytime I want. Barry just has to keep sitting in his chair if I want him to. That's why Dennis and Miss Patricia said I could be with them.
It's actually sort of crazy that Dennis says this to Claire earlier,
You shouldn't trick children.
when you realize that Patricia and Dennis are just using Hedwig to subdue the rest of the alters.
No, can I kiss you? So you want to? I mean, I don't know much about kissing though.
Yeah.
Love? No, nope. Can't even make the joke. You know, because usually when people kiss, I just say love, but nah. Pretty sure consent doesn't apply when it's for your kidnapper. How not to kiss or treat other humans lessons, even if you're 9? How's that?
You might be pregnant now.
And reproduction lessons also.
I get into trouble on purpose so I can get sent to detention to get away from everyone so that I can be alone.
Well, that's just straight up heartbreaking, especially after hearing her classmates' opinions of her in the beginning.
How this beast can crawl on walls, using the slightest friction and imperfections to hold his body.
Have to love the ridiculousness of how the beast is described, almost like a double red herring where you think, oh, they're just making it sound dumb, so I'll think it's real, and then it'll end up not being real. Or did I just get involved in a land war in Asia? Oh man, that facial switch where you can really see a new person sitting there. Which is another DID accuracy confirmed. Alters often have to pretend to fit into certain situations.
Because he resides in the train yard, as the story goes, because Kevin's dad left on a train.
Here's your second tie-in to Unbreakable, East Rail 177. I might be reading a little too much into this, but I think Casey is napping on the floor because the last time she fell asleep on the cot, she woke up with Hedwig spooning her. She's probably assuming he couldn't sneak up on her as easily if she's on the ground. Also, as a survivor, not wanting to spend any more time on that cot makes sense. James McAvoy doesn't even care, although his moves are pretty sweet. Also surprised this shot wasn't used for the trailer. That little break to smile.
I know.
Self-confidence. More little background clues. Love it. He's a kid, so drawings of animals, stuffed animals, and figurines. But it's because he lives at a zoo and probably steals from the gift shop.
Represents the highest form of human's evolution. He believes the time of ordinary humanity is over.
You know, the last time you went up against a guy who believed stuff like that, you were telling Jean Grey to let go and unleash her power. So what happened, X? Nope. Not the last time she'll have to face down a dark figure with a shotgun.
This place is closed. No, it's okay. You can't get in.
No, it's okay.
It's actually crazy more of us didn't figure out it was a zoo. Not that it really matters that much, but once you add all the pieces together, it seems so obvious.
Her optical nerves regenerated because of her beliefs.
So this is interesting, but probably not based entirely in reality. As far as DID accuracy goes, to paraphrase Nebula's insights, it's kind of like another case of your perception is your reality. If one alter believes they've broken a bone and another doesn't, the bone is most likely not physically broken. However, that doesn't change the experience of the alter who believes the bone is broken. Healing bones or blindness through DID is getting more into comic book territory.
When you said that you thought this situation was extraordinary...
Okay, so I know the connections to Unbreakable should be obvious to anyone that's seen the Glass trailer, but extraordinary was Elijah Price's word. Could be a coincidence, could just be Shyamalan tying the two together thematically, or Mr. Glass has been grooming the Beast.
He believes we are extraordinary.
Where else would the Beast get that idea? Dennis had never even heard Fletcher say it before tonight.
Help me. This is an egregious wrong. His identity is monstrous.
It would be easy to be critical of Dr. Fletcher at this point for not seeing the writing on the wall and trying to plead with someone who's currently keeping girls captive in their underwear. But a few things. As much as she has therapy sessions with Kevin, something else that Nebula and I agreed on was that she seems more concerned with research than actually helping Kevin. So sacrificing her work by just leaving and calling the cops would be a tough decision. And if you don't like that cynical approach, she sort of sacrifices herself for them in the only way she can think of, by blocking the strike box.
Thank you, Dennis.
Visually, I love these blackout cuts back and forth between Dennis and Patricia, and Nebula confirmed that it would be like this, almost like teleporting for each alter. Pretty solid clue that Kevin's father didn't leave, but died on that train, confirming the connection to Easter L-177. Another dolly zoom, this time bringing it all in, making the Beast fill up the train car. Which, obviously, train car, of course his father leaving on one would make it significant to him. This piece of music, building towards the reveal of the Beast. Ooh. Scenes like these are like anti-wife wins. She audibly murmurs at unrelenting situations like this. Which is the intended effect. Sorry, sweetie. Anti-wife win. James McAvoy's workout routine? I'll give that a brutal. These satisfying moments are one thing that Shyamalan has always succeeded at. Just a simple pan-around reveal. Kinda brutal? To be fair, there are a lot of imperfections on that plaster wall, so like, it's just awesome that we're showing the Beast doing the one thing Dr. Fletcher mentioned as tinfoil hat worthy. Good stuff.
I swear I was on a bus. I don't remember anything after that.
This moment of reprieve from the terror, it's like taking a breath for the first time in 10 minutes. Kevin Wendell Crumb is by far my favorite piece of music in the film. A soothing gloom that almost massages your brain into relaxation until it starts to dawn on Kevin what is actually going on, and you get notes from meeting the others where the Beast was coming into the light, almost warning our subconscious of his return.
Kill me.
And most importantly, a glimmer of sympathy for Kevin, a victim of abuse who's lost control of his own mind. Also, the fact that this is the reason his full name snaps him back into the light. Gut-wrenching. Here's an interesting continuity thing. When Kevin is cycling through all his altars, there's no blood in his face. But once Hedwig steals the light for the Horde, the blood from eating the Unpure returns. I know we cross into fantasy with the Beast, but you could look at the veins filling with excess blood as extra adrenaline, which would make him temporarily stronger, like the lady lifting the car off the baby effect. Brutal egg.
I'm going to take care of you. You won't be giving me any trouble, will you?
Badass bad guy? What? You can't take 2 shotgun shells to the body?
You are different from the rest.
I've never dealt with abuse, I've never dealt with self-harm, so I don't know what, if anything, this makes people who have feel. All I can say is that this scene makes me tear up, and I sincerely hope that it's not exploitative, but cathartic. I'll say that I don't think it's a superficial ploy using these 2 very real, very prevalent afflictions. I think the way the film and Casey hold on to her trauma so close, once it's revealed, it just breaks me. It's really all I can say.
The broken are the more evolved.
So if he spares her because she's broken, how do you think he'll feel about someone who's unbreakable? It's not really a twist, but the fact that the Beast picked up traits from the different animals where he lives does add another level to that identity. Ha! He's on a catwalk. Yeah, you done screwed up, Vince. Might as well keep those orange headphones now, Vince. Vince?
Third deceased name of Dr. Karen Fletcher. Still trying to locate the family.
She said earlier that her patients are her family.
Your uncle's here. You ready to go?
Slightly ambiguous, but to me this means she's definitely going to say something this time.
Mr. Glass.
Oh, snap. Obviously, this is amazing. I don't even know if you'd call this a twist, but either way, Shyamalan pulled the rug out from under us again. I also love the name tag. I'm not joking here, guys. It's really him. I want to start with something that I think is important, especially coming from the positive movie guy. Hollywood has a bad habit of taking mental conditions and making them evil. Simply put, not all people with DID are hiding a secret evil identity. Probably and hopefully goes without saying, but it has to be really annoying to see yourself represented one way so often to the point that people completely misunderstand the disorder. Nebula confirmed that while there are some, there aren't a ton of great options for realistic portrayals. I'm not saying I need Shyamalan to throw disclaimers in all of his movies. It's just unfortunate, I guess. I will say that tying the film into a comic book universe is really the only recontextualization that sort of excuses some of these issues. Kevin isn't really suffering from DSM-5 DID. He's a comic book villain. That's all. And going back through, the movie does an okay job of separating the two through Dr. Fletcher's research and the fact that the scientific and medical community don't really agree with her. Anyway, on to the movie. Shyamalan. Shyamalama ding dong. I don't know, there's something really satisfying thinking about him sitting there in his room planning this out. We know he wanted to make an Unbreakable sequel almost immediately after, but then he misstepped a few times. So he's there, sitting in the dark, rubbing his hands together. They'll see. Not only am I going to make a comeback with a genuinely solid, entertaining, and moving thriller, but it's also going to be a secret origin story for the villain in my next movie, the long-awaited sequel. It gives me a lot of joy, to say the least. Especially considering that he was laying it all on the line. If Split tanked, making Glass would have been a really tough sell. You gotta respect him for doubling down. I mean, the real twist is that in the annals of history, this will be a supervillain origin story, not a horror movie. That's just... So I started this video talking about the cinematography, and you might find yourself thinking, well, great, Shyamalan found himself a good DP who knew what he was doing. And you're not wrong. Mike Giolakis' style is hardwired into the film. The creepingly slow zooms you just barely notice as if the camera needs to get away from Dennis without Dennis knowing it. The uncomfortable close-ups during revealing conversations. And his general framing throughout different scenes is simply beautiful. It Follows is probably his biggest work where you get to see a lot of his style come through. But Shyamalan worked with my man Andrew Lesnie before. Stuff just doesn't always work out. In some perfect confluence of events, you got Shyamalan meshing with a DP that produced story and character-driven cinematography where you can feel the purpose of every shot. But to be really honest, I have to get into the weeds a little here, but it's to illustrate a point that's central to my channel's overall message. So writer, director, and DP working well together is important, but without someone to edit that vision together, you still got nothing. Luke I'm sorry, man. Luke edited this film as well as The Visit, and he worked on After Earth, a movie no one would say isn't edited well, and, you guessed it, The Last Airbender, which was DP'd by Andrew Lesnie, if he didn't get that. You know, this Andrew Lesnie. But Luke was just an apprentice on Last Airbender. The lead editor was Conrad Buff IV. So now you're thinking, aha, well, there's your problem. The editing in that movie is nonsensical at times. Right, the guy who edited Titanic, T2 Judgment Day, and The Abyss. So, what the heck, right? Shyamalan is a good writer and director. Laugh all you want, but most people don't get lucky even 3 times if you want to be stingy, 5 or 6 if you want to be generous. And everyone else that worked on things with him that flopped have some degree of pedigree of success. But just because the writer-director of The Sixth Sense, the DP from Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the editor of T2, and just for fun, the composer from The Dark Knight, art director from Pacific Rim and The Avengers, and the casting director from the Grand Budapest Hotel, let that one sink in. Just because they all work together, there's still no assurance of anything. My point is that this doesn't just happen. It's not easy. There are no foregone conclusions. The stars need to align, which is why any amount of success should be celebrated. And it may just be as simple as Shyamalan and Lesnie struggle to communicate well, so he doesn't get the shots he needs, which leaves Buff out in the cold when he goes to cut the thing together, and then he and Shyamalan get their wires crossed, and when they try to fix it, you end up with this. Other times you end up with this. Both are why I'm here making these videos. Alright, out of the weeds. Crew, consider yourself celebrated. Which is still only half of the equation. And it's not like McAvoy is any guarantee of anything either. But when you watch him in something like this, you start to realize that any failures in his career are probably not on him. McAvoy just grabs your attention every single time he's on screen. His talent shines through every moment, from the subtle to the overt. It's like he changes his facial structure sometimes to become a different alter. In between the creepy but also kinda endearing kid who always has more to say, etc. And the super extra fashion designer who was actually just the OCD pervert in disguise, he created something special. One of the criticisms I've seen is that Shyamalan devalues abuse by basically using the adage, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Some people who have dealt with real abuse, specifically sexual assault, feel like it diminishes the very real trauma and PTSD these survivors have gone and still go through. I totally understand that. But I also think there's an answer to it within the film. There's a bit of darkness to the ending that you might miss. Casey doesn't actually beat the beast. You see, Casey and Kevin Crumb, or Casey, are two sides of the same coin. Survivors who took very different paths. Which, side note, is such an obvious and genius tie-in to Unbreakable, we should all feel dumb for not guessing the connection before it was revealed. But Kevin's mind fractured to cope with trauma and created other identities to protect himself, whereas Casey, who up until the end is not only still trapped in her abuse, shrunk inside herself, purposely getting into trouble to be alone, and always pulling away from potential friends. So Shyamalan presents us with both options, obviously leading us to believe that Casey would overcome. But she can't, because this isn't our universe. No amount of trauma or preparation or being stronger because she wasn't killed made her able to overpower the beast. It was only his mythos and recognition of a parallel soul that saved her. He let her go when she had no options left. And while she does a heck of a job escaping and manipulating to get to this point, even pulling the trigger this time, in the end, it's the beast's strength through trauma that ultimately mattered. I honestly think Shyamalan's point is a tad muddled and more about the comic nature of the universe than a statement about abuse survivors, but I think it's interesting nonetheless. While you can't beat your trauma has some truth to it, it's still a terrible message in and of itself. But, in finally pulling that trigger, for better or worse, this is a look of someone who's ready to stand up to her abuser and hopefully find a way out. This will be a hard opinion of mine to swallow, but the beast's line,
"The broken are the more evolved,"
while maybe romanticizing trauma a little, may also be what sparks Casey's resolve. Difficult because Dennis is just another abuser, while the beast is more like a force of nature, kind of a twisted response to surviving abuse. This is another one of those times I heard myself back and realized I wasn't explaining my thoughts well enough. Just because she had an emotional response doesn't mean the beast is right or justified. Not every survivor would be triggered the same way. Real life isn't usually a few poignant moments that change the course of your life. For most people, it's a daily struggle. Trauma isn't romantic, it mostly just sucks. Everyone finds their own way to deal with it and hopefully rise above it. A little honesty from me, because I know this is already the top 10 comments below. I don't know what happened. Unbreakable was legitimately one of the first movies I ever put on my schedule in 2015. Genuinely, in the first 10. Actually, I think it was going to be in place of After Earth, and at the time I was still sort of figuring out what types of movies I wanted to do, and I kept pushing it back. Anyway, long story short, I'm glad I didn't do it back then because my approach is a little more in-depth now, and I hate to be that guy, but it's been one of my favorite movies since my brother made me watch it in 2001. So I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it soon, I think. I'll find a reason. With the way this video is structured, it's actually hard to really appreciate how solid and suspenseful this movie is. There are a lot of long pauses inside long takes with characters just staring. It's in these moments that Shyamalan reminds us he knows how to build tension and direct actors. He gets amazing performances out of his cast and is never afraid to bring the camera right in. Even though Glass isn't a critical darling yet, I'm still gonna see it and I'm still sincerely excited for it. If it tanks, I hope it doesn't end Shyamalan's career. I guarantee he has a few more solid stories up his sleeve. And I'm just genuinely curious to see how he meshes all these characters together. And you know, if Barry could manage to take the light back from Patricia Dennis and Hedwig, he definitely has a promising career ahead of him. But for a lot of artists, the hardest part is getting your work out there. If Barry were to, say, make a website displaying his talent, I mean, he could even start selling his dresses online. But us creative types don't have the time to build and then manage a website, I hear you yelling from the back. Well, that's where today's sponsor, Wix, comes in. Wix can help Barry create a professional website where they take care of all the heavy lifting. And I'm not just reading copy, I literally just redesigned my site in a short amount of time, and I was truly amazed at the number of amazing options available from Wix. Different themes, layouts, font options. I was actually blown away by how I could integrate other apps like Patreon into the site seamlessly. And everything is customizable, so you get the exact look you want even if you're a nutty perfectionist like me. So Barry can open an online store, Hedwig could start a blog to recount all his anecdotes.
I have red thought.
Patricia could start a bed and breakfast and use Wix bookings to organize and operate the entire business. They, and more importantly you, can create anything you want, whether you're a novice, a business owner, or a professional website builder. So check out the URL on screen or click the link in the description to sign up and start building your site for your next project today. And just a heads up, there won't be a new Everything Great About next week. I was planning to take these 2 weeks and then things got, whatever. But I'll be back the week after next.
My name's Hedwig.